Ahmed Hussen is Canada's Minister of Families, Children and Social Development. He was part of a team of ministers announcing these proposed changes today. Minister, first of all, thanks for taking time to speak with me tonight. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate being here.
What is the driving motivation for these changes your government is proposing today, treating these drug offences as addiction issues and not criminal issues?
Because we follow the evidence. We've seen that this one-size-fits-all approach has failed. The conservative policies that over emphasized punishment to the detriment of rehabilitation and reintegration and treatment for people has serious consequences, especially for Black, Indigenous, and racialized Canadians. So we're taking action to keep communities safe, to keep Canadians safe, because the conservative policies were not keeping our communities safe. They were just ensuring that our court systems were clogged up, that our jails were filled to the brim. We need to step back and realize that yes, prison is the right place for some serious offenders of serious offenses, but for those who need treatment, who are struggling with addictions and other challenges, they need treatment. They don't need to be dealt with by the harsh hand of
Okay.
the criminal justice system.
To be clear here, you're repealing mandatory minimum penalties for certain drug offences and also for some offences involving the use of a firearm or possession in some cases of a firearm. You've mentioned the objective here in large measure is to reduce the disproportionate harm being caused by mandatory minimum penalties to Indigenous people and Black people. How will you measure that? How will you know these proposals are working?
We know that right now the system that is in place is not working. We see a massive disproportionate impact, negative impact that mandatory minimum penalties have had, especially on Indigenous, Black, and racialized Canadians. The proportion of those populations in the general population versus the prison population is massively disproportionate. So we have to address that. And Canadians have told us that this is a social justice issue that we have to address. We have to address issues around systemic discrimination and marginalization within
Okay.
Canada's justice system.
Let me talk about the timing here. You and your colleagues today at the news conference slammed the mandatory minimums brought in by the Conservatives, and yet it's taken 6 years and a pile of court challenges and decisions from courts to see your government propose this bill to eliminate these mandatory minimums. So I guess I'm wondering, it's a social justice issue. What's taken so long to move on it?
We have been, of course, making sure that we get this right. We've been consulting with the Canadian Association of Black Lawyers and many other stakeholders. We've heard from Canadians that it is time that we address these issues. You saw thousands and thousands of Canadians emerge into the streets last summer to demand that we collectively as a country address more robustly the issues around systemic discrimination of Black, Indigenous, and people of color in this country. And one of the systems that clearly demonstrates the need for reform is our criminal justice system, which again disproportionately impacts on those populations. As a former criminal defense lawyer, I have seen firsthand those impacts on those populations. And so we have to do better, and we are taking action to put in place measures to do better as a country.
Let's talk about the drug offenses piece and the mandatory minimums being repealed there. If this is a move to treat drug offenses as an addiction
Yes.
and a health matter and not a criminal matter, we know the country's facing an opioid abuse epidemic as we speak here. And I guess I'm wondering, why doesn't your government move further than this? Decriminalize drug use, period, instead of changing the penalty regime. Why not wipe it out as a criminal offense altogether?
I think it's important to recognize that we are the government that moved ahead with cannabis legalization to make sure that we regularize and legalize cannabis. We fulfill that campaign commitment. When it comes to issues around drug addictions and other challenges that people face who interact with the criminal justice system, we know that we have to address all the social determinants that lead to interactions with the criminal justice system. The criminal justice system is there for particular crimes and particular hardened offenders, but for those who need treatment, uh, we need to provide them those opportunities. The issue around, the approach around drug policy is a debate that we can have, but the addressing of drug addictions and minor drug offenses through the heavy hand of the criminal justice system has not worked, and we are
Right.
taking
But
the right action to do that.
if the government's saying it's a health addiction issue, and it's an addiction issue, and it's a health issue, not a public safety or criminal issue, wouldn't it seem to follow then you decriminalize all simple possession of illicit drugs, and it seems that's where this would be headed, no?
Well, you referred to the opioid crisis. We know that these drugs, including fentanyl and others, have significant negative health impacts on people. So of course we are concerned about the entry into Canada and the impacts that they have not only on individuals but on families, on communities. And so that is something that our government has been very much engaged in. However, today's announcement was particularly around issues related to people who face drug charges as a result of having addictions and
Okay.
having other challenges, and they need treatment. And this is precisely why today's announcements will make a big difference in the people who are facing these challenges, but also save a lot of time and money from our criminal justice system to make it more
The
fairer, to make it more efficient.
Okay, one of the signature pieces of this bill is actually requires police and prosecutors to consider
Yeah.
diversion programs to treatment
Yes.
for treatment rather than laying charges for simple possession of drugs. But it doesn't require them to choose those options, just to consider the options. And I guess I'm wondering, why not just remove the charge of simple possession from the law altogether and make the only option for police or prosecutors diversion and treatment?
We trust police officers, well-trained police officers and Crown prosecutors to make those decisions based on the circumstances of each and every case and offender. This will not just be a suggestion. In fact, it will be a requirement for them to consider these diversion options, and it will be part of their training. It will be part of their directions moving forward, and we will implement this. However,
Are you
we
expecting
also
them
don't.
to opt for those options more often than not?
Absolutely. When it is appropriate, they will do that because that's part of their training. These are professionals who are trained to carry out their work in a certain
Okay.
manner, and but we also trust them to make the call based on the circumstances surrounding each offender and each offense, because in some cases diversion will not be an option based on the circumstances of the offender and the charge.
All
So
right.
we trust these professionals to do the right thing. What we are saying is they have to consider this more often
Okay.
than not, and it will be part of their training and their direction.
We'll have to leave it there for tonight, Minister Hussen. Thanks so much for your time, sir. Good to talk to you again.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.